So I'm Kelly Doherty. I work with the foster care team at 4Kids, and earlier this year we got a referral come in for a little 1-year-old boy. He had actually been coming into care this time for the third time in his short little life, and he was able to be placed with the same foster family all 3 times. They had taken him in twice before, and he had been reunified twice before. They had built a good relationship with his mom, and this family had just been praying for him and his mom over the past few months. God had just laid it on their heart that something wasn't quite right. And mom had been in an abusive relationship, and so they knew that that was always a possibility with him going back to live with her. And they actually just had a little baby of their own. They had a little girl, and they had been on hold while they had this baby, and their support worker had encouraged them, it had been a couple months, encouraged them to come back off of hold, to take placements again. And little did we know, they had this feeling in their heart that it wasn't the right time. So they remained on hold until this little boy came into care early that August morning, and they took him in and were able to provide stability to him since this was their third time. He knew them and was familiar with them, and he was coming into foster care because his mom had actually given birth to a little newborn boy, so he had a little brother. And she gave birth at 28 weeks. He only weighed 2 pounds, and he was born substance exposed. He did go through withdrawals, and so he had a long journey of healing ahead of him. The hospital staff wasn't sure if he was going to make it. They weren't sure if he was going to have medical difficulties. There was just a lot of unknowns. And so the family who took in his older brother was prayerfully considering taking him in too, depending on how he did over the next few months in the NICU. And so we were getting closer to the time of his discharge, and the family called me and they shared that with this little 1-year-old boy and their few-month-old biological daughter, they just felt like 3 children under the age of 1, especially with this little baby's needs, was too much for them at this time. So within the same hour of them calling me to tell me, we had another foster family agree to take this little boy in for placement. And so this family had actually been fostering with 4Kids for a long time. They've adopted 3 children through foster care, and after their 3rd adoption, they felt as if this chapter of their life was over and it was time to close their home. But God really put it on the dad's heart that it wasn't time yet, and they decided to keep their home open. And they just felt like God was calling them to stay open for some unique situation. And that's the words they used. So when I called them about this little boy in the NICU, they knew exactly that this was the boy, this was the reason they stayed open. And their youngest son actually had a lot of the same medical difficulties that this little boy was having. And so they were experienced in all these areas. They were familiar with how to care for them. Their son had been on oxygen for quite some time, which this little boy was on at the time. And so they even had oxygen tanks in their closet, like crazy things like that. And so this mom went to visit him every single day in the NICU for a month and a half until he was able to be discharged, and she just loved on him while he was there. There was a short period of time where we thought he may need to go to a medical home because he wasn't improving, and by the time he was ready for discharge, he was off of all of his medications. He had been weaned off of oxygen, and he was able to go to this home who was ready to care for him. So both of these boys have been able to go to a 4Kids home. The families have connected and become quick friends. They've bonded together, and these boys will get to be in each other's lives forever.